Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Meta. This episode is going to be a slightly heavy episode because we're going to touch on a bunch of topics. Some of them are actually related to the field of biology. So if you're not ready for it, you can go back and take some time because this episode needs your full attention because I'm going to basically be demystifying the nature of how humans interact with each other. So here we go. Okay, so this episode is called Stack Rank and Neurotransmission. Now, imagine the last time you walked into a room. Let's say you walk into a room and there are many people there. One thing that you unconsciously do that you have not ever noticed yourself do or not done with full awareness is the fact that you have ranked yourself in that room. Right? You when you walk into a room, you either know if you're a leader, you know if you're a follower, you know what rank technically you would be. And this it's not like you put a number on it and say, I'm ranked 5 in this room out of 10 people. You just have a vague idea of where you stand in a room and how important your opinions or words are. And that feeling or that rank is called the stack rank, right? So humans and most mammals and actually most vertebrates and even beyond that, they self-organize into groups bound by hierarchies, which means it is natural for humans to create structures where there's some leaders and there's some followers, which is why leaders are so important, which is why society keeps trying to pull out leaders. So people at the top of their dominance hierarchies, and all dominance hierarchies kind of, they form a triangle. They control the wealth, power, and have high status. And this isn't just some fantasy or some cultured, conditioned thing. It's in our biology. And as we learn and as we go through many different research papers, we learn that all scientists, most, scientists in the neurology space, most management theorists, they all agree on this. It's something that we can't change even if we try to because it's in tune with our biology, and our behavior at the end of the day is an expression of our biology, right? So people at the top of the dominance hierarchies control wealth, power, and have high status. And you'll find this from the beginning of time till now, not just in creatures like humans, but in primates, in certain sort of fishes, in certain sort of, even in some insects, right? So you can move up a dominance hierarchy, and this is what people call moving up in the world, right? And there are a lot of people who question this, especially, people in the media. They say, hey, everyone should be equal, everyone should be flat. And we'll come to why that's a terrible idea in the future, right? So I started doing my research on social rank around the same time I started doing research into mental health, which was almost 4 or 5 years ago when we launched our first product, which was Calm India. So we went through 1,400 research papers. We try to understand why people get depressed, what is the importance of different neurotransmitters in the brain, how does serotonin work, how does dopamine work, and not just surface level stuff, right? Not stuff you'd find on the first page of Google. We actually dug deep into research papers, met over 100 therapists, worked with several people, both offline and online, to kind of verify our claims. And most importantly, as we started learning, we realized something that is a little bit hard to understand, right? It's not intuitive. And it's basically this. Serotonin was found to directly support dominant structures in primate groups, in monkeys, right? So studies conducted in vervet monkeys, a type of monkey, demonstrated that alpha male individuals or individuals at the top of the stack rank had higher levels of blood and brain serotonin that decreased when dominant position was lost, right? So they had this measurable neurotransmitter that dropped the minute they lost their dominance position because of injury or whatever. This neural social rank was measured in the part of the brain called the raphe nucleus, right? In fact, it's measurable. You can actually just take most animals with a decently functioning brain and pull out the raphe nucleus and measure this. So giving antidepressants to these monkeys, the same antidepressants that work on human beings to these monkeys, increase their social rank, right? So somehow what we do in human beings and what we do in monkeys with manipulating neurotransmitters works exactly the same way. And I'm going to link you to this research paper because it's very important for you to understand that serotonin is not the happy chemical or the contentness chemical. It is a chemical messenger, right? It does many different things. In the stomach, if I gave you serotonin, if I just gave you exogenous serotonin, you would probably have diarrhea because there are receptors in the stomach that capture these serotonin molecules and give you, it does different functions depending on where these receptors are. But in the brain, serotonin has very specific functions, and it has to do with not just with mood, it also has to do with a lot with how comfortable you're feeling in your environment, what rank you think you are, right? So it's a measure of your social rank. And this is a hard concept to understand. It's a hard concept. It's not intuitive, right? It's your mood and the way you feel is actually measured by a chemical, and that chemical depends on how you feel in your environment. Humans are truly social creatures, and the way we feel, the way we function, the behaviors we have, they're all hyper dependent on what our role in society is. And that seems like it blows a lot of people's mind, especially, when you see people on Instagram who put up quotes and you see all these quotes, you have to understand that most of those quotes have been made by people below the age of 25 to 30, because that's Instagram's target audience. In fact, much younger, right? Somebody comes up with these quotes. So they misunderstand how the world is, because most of them don't understand biology well enough, right? They haven't studied biology for 4 or 5 years. They haven't studied management. They probably don't manage people. And take it from me, right? With most top rated researchers, with most clinical psychologists, with most people in management, we understand now that how you feel in your environment, or how you fit into your environment, and how you feel on a daily basis, and your behaviors are all one and the same thing. They're very closely related. In fact, little less than the same thing. They're very, very closely related. And I realized this first when many years ago, when there was a time in my life where I was feeling anxious, and I was having some anxious thoughts, and a friend of mine came to me and he said something that really rung true to me. He said, "You are not feeling anxious because you're thinking anxious thoughts. You're probably anxious, which is why you're thinking anxious thoughts." And we've studied this on so many people. We've spent our time and energy and money, studying these people. I spend a lot of my time, not just online reading up research papers, but also in the lab, trying to understand how brains work with the best in the field. And we've kind of understood that this is in fact true. Your mood controls your behaviors, controls your thoughts, which goes back to control your mood, right? And this is socially dependent, because if you zoom out, this happens. Many different people are going through these cycles, and our behaviors are interdependent of each other, right? So serotonin is not just a measure of your mood, it's also a measure of your social rank. So in a way, your mood and your social rank are almost directly proportional. The more serotonin in your blood, the less aggressive you think others are toward you, and the less other people's judgments matter to you. Those people who just act like they don't care about what other people think about them? Yeah, their neurotransmission profile is probably different than most other people's, right? So depression, which is most people just thought of it simplistically as a lack of serotonin. It's much more complex than that. It's a biopsychosocial and chemical disease that can be fixed by either increasing social rank or by antidepressant medication. The net symptoms and the results after rectification is the exact same. Whether you went up in society and did well for yourself and knew your role and felt comfortable in that role, or you were given antidepressants, eventually it becomes the same thing. The amount of the mood and your social rank eventually become the same thing. In fact, if you give a person antidepressants, that person is more likely to do well in society. And some people can have genuine serotonin defects, right? This isn't to say that everybody suffering from depression is suffering from depression because they've not found a role in society. It could also be because their bodies are not producing enough serotonin, or they have the genes that prevent them from metabolizing serotonin well, or that prevent them from something called reuptake of serotonin. So, and some people could just have ruined sleep cycles. And in fact, sleep cycles are one of the most important things when it comes to maintaining your serotonin rhythm, because serotonin also has a rhythm, right? So it's unrelated to social dominance, but which affects their social dominance. If you're not in a good mood, obviously it's harder for you to cooperate. It's harder for you to be ambitious because you're struggling with your own mood issues. So your behaviors are different, right? So your serotonin can rise and fall according to your perceived position in the dominance hierarchy. So it's not your actual rank. There's no such thing as your actual rank in a room, but your perceived position. If you feel like you're not doing well enough or you're always being suppressed, your serotonin is actually going to go low. So feeling, which is why for a lot of people, the fake it till you make it works. Because when you fake it till you make it, you're pretending like your social rank is better, which is why, your mood is better, and which is why you're able to perform better behaviors, because of which you're actually taking action. Because you're actually taking action, your real social rank actually climbs until your mood and your actual social rank become one and the same. Right? So the dominance submissiveness axis is defined as a feeling of control and influence over one's surroundings and others versus a feeling of being controlled or influenced by one's surroundings or others. At the age of 15 months, children can infer whether an individual is dominant or not based on their previous subjective experiences. And, I'm going to link you to this, and this, because this is a controversial stance in society, right? And this is something that is very research backed, and I'm I'm going to make sure that we have a lot of research, because extraordinary claims, when you make a claim that is slightly extraordinary, you have to put in the research and the data to prove its effectiveness, to prove that this is real. We're not just, it's not a correlation causation thing. This is an actual causation thing, right? So put in a lot of research here. This is not something that people are okay with. People don't like being told that, hey, my role in society actually matters to my mood. They don't like being told that. So it's very, very important that you go through the research, that you go through the data and come up with your own kind of viewpoint on this, and all the data correlates on this axis, right? So people at the top, and I've met a lot of people at the top, from multi-millionaires to multi-billionaires to people who've raised hundreds of millions of dollars. People at the top don't really like each other, but they have mutual respect for each other. This is my personal learning from this, right? And humans have invented many different hierarchies known as industries to avoid overt competition, right? Just to prevent, all of us competing for the same resource, we said, hey, let's make these different industries so that, you can climb up yours and I can climb up mine. So we have enough for us to compete in and enough for us to move up the ranks. And one great equalizer, and I keep saying this, right? One great equalizer is aging and death. When somebody who's extremely dominant, maybe she's been dominant for 50, 60 years, but at the end of the day, there's the great equalizer, which is death, which allows the next progeny or somebody else to fight for that position and get to the same place, right? And obviously it's a competition, and in the competition, there are some winners, there are some losers, but for the winners, every time you have to work hard. But in our society, when you win and you've accumulated some resources and you've accumulated some power, what happens is you work very hard to keep it. But and you can keep it for many, many years, many decades even. But the thing is, when you age, when you become physically unfit, whether in human beings or in monkeys, the dominant people usually pass over the position. And the problem now is that humans, compared to, in the 1950s, where we had a lifespan of 40, 45, 50 years, now the lifespan has become really good because of medicine. We have people who live up to the age of 80 and 90, which is why those people are not letting go of their positions. Which is why millennials are having harder and harder time trying to get into positions of power, because it's just the people at the top are not fading out as quickly as possible. And that's a good thing, right? It's a good thing, but it also creates a lot of economic inequality. So in this image, I've shown you that there is some overlap. The construction industry and the finance industry, there is some overlap, obviously. There's some overlaps between finance and agriculture. In fact, all the industries, there is a little bit of overlap, but there's still a lot of place for a lot of winners and a lot of losers. So if you find yourself, not doing well in, a finance role because you took economics, or if you feel like you're not doing well in mathematics, maybe you're just in the wrong industry. Maybe you just need to find a better industry with a game that you like playing. All of these can be looked at as different games. There are different rules for these. And I'm just using the word game to denote that there are rules, there are players, there are prizes, rewards, there are punishments, and there are some winners, and obviously there are some losers, right? So these are called industries. And how do you move up an industry, right? Big question I'm asked next is, how do you move up an industry? And how you move up an industry is through visibility. First, people need to know that you exist, right? You need to put yourself out there. And this is the number one mistake that most people make, which is they just don't put themselves out there. You might be a really good mathematician, but if you've never put out a paper, nobody will ever know who you are. You will never get invited anywhere. You will never get to meet the best. You will never get opportunities. The next thing is diligence, right? Obviously, you need to work hard. If you're not going to work hard, it's not going to work out well for you, because if you're a lazy person, doesn't matter how much visibility you have, you're just not going to get the rewards. The next thing is the network. Who do you know? What kind of relationships have you built with those people? For example, a lot of people don't understand that one thing that can really get you ahead in life, especially when you're young, is having an uncle who's well connected, or having a father who's well connected, or having a mother who's well connected, or having, some relative who's well connected, or somebody who really cares about you who's well connected. And unfortunately, when I was growing up, I didn't have that, but I've seen it work really well for the people who get ahead without, putting in that level of hard work or whatever. And it's not like I complain about it, right? It's not like I'm saying that I didn't have those resources, but I understand the value of those resources. And we work very, very hard to build those relationships, to build that network. And because these are not networks we build through blood relationships at Avalon, these are, friends, or these are business partners, we make sure we constantly add value to them and spend time in keeping these networks and relationships. It's important. The next thing is intelligence, right? Obviously, if you're smart, if you can use technology, if you can, do some math, if you're able to, put people together, whether it's from an intelligence level smart, or if it's just an emotional quotient level smart, it's important for you to be smart. right? But it's not as important as the relationships, hard work, or visibility. Trust me, intelligence is a very, very overrated skill, especially when it comes to business and business success. Last thing is luck. A lot of the opportunities I've got in my life, and I've done a bunch of things in my life, for most people and a lot of people, is luck. When I wanted to publish a book, I sent out an email to many different publishers, right? And I only got replies from one or two. Luckily for me, one of them was one of the biggest publishers in the world, Bloomsbury, right? But it could have so happened that that person at Bloomsbury did not open his email inbox that day. It could have just happened. And, in which case I would not be a Bloomsbury published author. It wouldn't be a number one Amazon bestseller, business bestseller. So luck is very, 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 very underrated. It's probably one of the most important things in my opinion. And of course, the best way to make your own luck is to take as many opportunities as possible, is to try to be involved in as many things as possible. One last thing that can really get you up the social rank is technology. And we've only seen this in the last 10 or 15 years with the rise of so many companies that just exploded beyond measure because of technology. For something like Facebook to go from, zero to billions of dollars in valuation that quickly, or Instagram or WhatsApp with a small number of employees. Until now, it was very hard for you to be a billion-dollar company with 10 or 20 employees. It was unheard of. But technology allows you to do that. So you can move up your industry much faster because you need to employ much less people. You need to tell much less people or convince much less people of a story to get to work with you. You can raise capital much easier. Technology really makes everything easier. From the visibility to the hard work, to the networks, to the intelligence, it makes everything easier, and technology accelerates everything you do. So you move faster. So there are social ranks within companies as well. The way to move up any social dominance hierarchy is similar. So we've spoken about, the finance industry or the commerce industry or some other industry, but every company has its own social rank as well. And that's what I'm trying to tell you, right? So a company in the finance industry could have its own social rank, and that could play a much larger role in a bigger social rank. So there's fish, there's bigger fish, and there's fish playing different games with different kinds of bigger fish. But at the end of the day, they're all playing in the same pool. So you will come in contact with those people, and there the social ranks are vague. So you don't know where you stand against somebody else because you've never competed before. The way to move up any social dominance hierarchy is similar. In Vervet Monkeys, subordinate group members treated with serotonin enhancers, which are antidepressants, achieve dominance by first increasing affiliative behavior towards group members. So here's what happens, right? And this is crazy because it just shows you this is exactly how humans work as well. When you're at the bottom of the rank and you want to move up, the first thing you do is you collaborate, right? These Vervet Monkeys, they become affiliative the minute they get a little bit of serotonin to get out of the mood bubble, right? Once they get a little bit action oriented, they start showing affiliative behavior. And then once they start teaming up and they start grouping up, suddenly they start, they've created a lot of relationships and affiliations. Once they get to the top, then they start showing aggressive behavior towards everyone at the bottom, right? And they only affiliate with other people who add value to them, right? So it seems like in both monkeys as well as human beings, if you want to get to the top, you need to help other people first. And this is a very old saying, right? If you want to get rich, make a rich person even richer and take your cut until you get to where you need to be. And then somebody else is going to do that for you or help you do that, right? So it's just how the industry or every social system works. And I found this to be 100% true. On a weekly basis, I interact with thousands of people, actually much, much more than that. And when I get the opportunity to interact with all of these people, what happens is that the people who I see who add value to my life or who add value to my company or who add value to at least each other or who show really good behavior, affiliative behavior, I want to work with them. Right? Even if it's not for money, I want to work with them. Right? And sometimes if they add a lot of value, I'm willing to pay them a lot of money because I'm like, they make my life easier. They make it easier for me to climb higher. Right? So at the end of the day, it's about affiliative behavior. And once you get to the top, once most people get to the top, what happens is then they might, to prevent losing out on what they've built, they might not allow people to enter that situation. And I've looked ahead at this, right? And I've said, if I ever get in that situation, what's going to happen? So this aggressive behavior that people show to, or Vervet Monkeys show towards everyone in their subordinate levels, I've seen that a lot with a lot of these bigger companies. And I've realized that the way to do it is to never feel like you're on top. If your perceived situation, if I'm always learning, if I'm always going to be like, I still have my next goal. And if I never get comfortable, right? If I never let my situation get to a point where I'm just like, I need to maintain what I have. And I want to avoid that at any means possible. I just have to look at the next goal. And maybe, that the next goal is medicine or the next goal is something beyond that. I don't know, but there's always got to be a next goal. But there are a lot of people in the industry, both in human beings as well as, primates, who are happy with where they've got. And because they're happy and content with where they've got, they go into maintenance mode, right? And then the aggression kicks in. So the similar effect was observed in humans. Application of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which are SSRIs, which are antidepressants, to these subjects was associated with increase in peer rated dominance and increased eye contact. Remember, I told you the gaze hypothesis when subjects were speaking. At the same time, subjects were more prone to reduce their award in favor of their opponents. That means when you are climbing up the top, when your serotonin increases, you are more willing to sacrifice an increased number of cooperative messages sent to opponents during mixed motive games. So what humans do when they're suddenly flooded with serotonin, they suddenly become really affiliative and they sacrifice for other people. And if you've seen a lot of things that I've done or a lot of things that successful people have done, they've given a lot for other people with not much asked in return. And I don't know yet whether I became like that because of my neurotransmission profile, and I have mapped my neurotransmission profile. So I don't know whether I became like that, but in periods of my life where, I felt the stress of social defeat or, when I subjectively felt bad mood, I know that anecdotally, I've become much less cooperative and much more aggressive in those periods, right? I wouldn't be okay with cooperating or sacrificing anything because I'd start thinking, what's in it for me? But today, I don't think like that at all. And I know a lot of really successful people who do not think like that. In fact, it seems like the people who give away things for free or the people that really sacrifice for other people are the ones who do the best at life, right? So I don't understand where the entire mentality of, I need to hold on to things or this is mine or individuality or this entire thing is mine and I need to, hold it and not cooperate with other people. I don't know where that comes from. That's a wrong idea. It's not backed by research. If you want to climb up, you need to help other people. You need to sacrifice for other people. That's just how it is, right? And I live by that rule, and I know a lot of really good entrepreneurs who live by that rule. The science backs it, right? So there is a way to reduce the social dominance rank, right? People prefer to follow leaders who show integrity and generosity with the off chance to increase their own social rank. There are corrective mechanisms to reduce a person's social dominance rank. So here are the ways that you are actually reducing another person's rank, or here's the ways that social dominance rank is reduced. First one is gossip, right? You can damage another person's reputation. Criticism, which is corrective behavior. You can be like, you're not doing that well. Disobedience, which is, you just don't listen to that leader. You make the leaders ineffective. Departure, which is you leave the group. And finally, it's elimination, right? So you either remove the leader through various different means. In the president's office, that could be an impeachment in the US. So, one of the biggest social constructs or a construct that we have that does all of this is the media, right? And the media kind of already knows this. Their job is actually to correct. Their job is to correct really powerful people. That's what the media does. And, they do this via damaging somebody's reputation. And today, most of the media, let's face it, has just become about this, right? It's becoming about not all of us can get to the top. So let's pull the people at the top a little lower. So it's about gossip. It's about criticism. It's about saying, hey, that guy raised so much money and failed, without doing the Sally Annie test, without going to step into their shoes and trying to understand, how many different factors it takes to actually fail. It's insane. Or how many different factors it takes to succeed. That's insane. I saw the Chandrayaan mission and, they failed, but they did such a good job with even getting there, getting that close. It's amazing. And when I saw some PR about people from other places saying, hey, they didn't even try or look, these guys can't even do this. It's just sad because those people who wrote that article, the effort required to write that article was maybe 2 minutes, right? To write that bad, damaging article, it was 2 minutes. And the effort required to send something to the moon is obviously, we know it's not 2 minutes, billions of dollars, a lot of hard work. And it's so easy, right? For you to write a bad article about somebody. And that's why, most of these people don't get to the top because their entire lives become about gossip and criticism and disobedience. And those are low serotonin behaviors. So at the end of the day, your goal if you want not success, but resource collection, if you want to improve the amount of resources you have and build a network, you need to be affiliative. You need to help other people and avoid gossip, even or criticism, even if there's actual genuine gossip or criticism. But at the same time, you should allow people of similar power to actually check themselves because they do, right? Not themselves, but each other, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't want a society where some people get too powerful. That's crazy amount of inequality. In fact, that's one of my biggest concerns with AI, because the first person with access to really powerful AI would create extreme economic skew, right? Because that person would be able to manipulate a lot of the media, because it's easy to media, in at least on the internet, is about visibility. That person will be able to manipulate visibility. If that person is able to manipulate visibility, then that person will be able to manipulate stock prices or prices of any market. The person will be able to make a lot of money, and then then they can get all the other things that they want, because money is the common proxy that we all run through. So stack ranking. In companies, managers are often forced to artificially rank employees according to performance. And now we're getting to management, right? In an actual company, managers are asked to do this. They're like, draw a bell curve and remove the people who are at the bottom of the bell curve. It's an artificial rating. It's not correlated to biology. And most managers avoid confrontation, right? People have to be trained to be confrontational in situations where confrontation is required. Sometimes you need to have a hard conversation. And this is again a reason why I don't like the MBAs, because you might have a confrontation, like a fake confrontation with somebody else. You might be asked to do it in a group discussion or whatever, but it's very different when you have to fire somebody or you have to correct somebody and their lives depend on it. It's like you're simulating the same situation, but it's not the same situation, because this real situation has a lot of risks associated with it, and it has real human emotions associated with it. Your tempers can flare, whereas the other one, you obviously already know that nothing's going to happen. It's like swimming in a baby pool and being told to imagine it's like an ocean. It's not, right? There are no sharks running around, and even if you're asked to imagine sharks, it's not the same level of risk. Right? So most managers avoid confrontation. People are not trained to do it. You need to be trained to do that. Humans avoid it by default. And stack ranking is a solution for such managers. The stack ranking method was a solution invented for such managers, so they don't have to confront weak people, or they don't have to confront people that they have to remove. So the boss often tells the manager, we did not train you to manage performance, and untrained humans anyway avoid confrontation. So we're just going to have you rank the people working under you from 1 to 10. We'll just fire 8, 9, and 10. And surprisingly, this is how companies work, right? This is exactly how companies work. And it can be effective in a lot of situations, but it's not a perfect system. Companies stack rank because it prevents needing managers to have confrontational training. And confrontational training, being able to have a hard conversation when things are not going according to plan, is something that everybody needs to learn. Right? So here's the bell distribution curve for people who want to see it. So you basically put some employees at the bottom and say these guys are unacceptable. You say some people are outstanding, and most people just meet expectations. So the people at the top, which is 4 and 5, or in the other case, 8 and 9, whatever score they get on the top, those guys are promoted. The ones at the bottom are fired. Right? So my entire problem with this is this system kind of encourage, like with managers, with most untrained managers, with people who don't really care so much about the business, who are not founders themselves, they're probably going to promote people who not just work well, but who also treat them really well, right? Who are really nice to them, who, buy them gifts or whatever. It could be many ways that you can impress a manager. And, you'll be surprised that is actually a very, very good way to progress in your career. And this advice I give people: if you want to get ahead in your career, be good at what you do, be super nice to your manager, even if that means you take some damage. Even if that means, when your manager shouts at you, you don't argue back. You never become confrontational with your manager. You never upset your master. You just say, okay, you know what? I'm going to listen to everything you do, but and here's some things here's some gifts to keep you happy. It's because it sits at the core of human needs. That's why I said, if you think this doesn't happen, you are turning a blind eye to evolutionary biology, right? And that's what this entire course is about, to show you that a lot of things we do in the world today, especially in companies, do not work, right? Or work in a completely different way than we think it does. So somebody who sits and who performs really well, who doesn't, treat everybody nicely, or who doesn't have the visibility, is always going to get ranked at a 3, even though that person might be really good. And I'll give you an example of this, right? Imagine your class and you have to pick a class monitor. You know that there are a lot of people in the front bench who study really hard. You know that. And maybe you're not friends with them. Maybe you sit on the back bench. There are other people on the back bench who are obviously not very good fits, but hey, they're your friends, right? And you're not going to let them down, and you have to rank everybody. So who are you going to choose as a class monitor? You're either going to choose people at the front who you think will do a good job if you're a person who cares about, keeping silence in the class, or one of your friends because, hey, they're your friends. You will never choose the people in the middle because A, they don't have the visibility, and B, you don't know if they're effective or not. Maybe there's some really good guy in the middle benches or some really good girl in the middle benches who's very smart, who is very effective, but simply because that person doesn't have the visibility, simply because that person hasn't interacted with you or, made you happy, you're not going to choose them. And it's exactly the same way with managers. Why do you think it's different with managers, right? Between somebody who's 20 years old or 15 years old and somebody who's 40 years old, there's very little difference in that regard. There's a lot of office politics, and it just seems like management books just avoid the idea of office politics. Office politics happens because we have tribal brains that have evolved in the plains of the savannah, and we try to just turn a blind eye to that, right? So we'll come across a lot more of this as we progress, but that's it for this episode. Catch you on the next one.